Okay, so chapter 1, section 1, day 2, express integers as fractions in m over n form. That just means as a fraction. It can be an improper fraction, but it cannot be a mixed number. So m over n form, that's just what that means. Okay, by the end of today, you can determine if a number is rational, and you can write rational numbers in m over n form. Okay, so remember, you insert your cursor in the text box and you delete it, and then you write what I tell you to write. Rational number is a number which can be written as m over n, where m and n are integers and n is not 0. N can't be 0 because you can't divide by 0. That would give you, I can't think what that is right now. An undefined number. Okay, so this simply means a rational number is a number that can be written as a fraction. To write a rational number in m over n form, if it's a mixed number, you need to convert it to an improper fraction and reduce. If it's an integer, you just place it over 1, which means the denominator is 1. If it's a decimal, write it as a fraction and then reduce. Remember, decimals, you write them as you read them. So 5 and 8 tenths would be that as a decimal. As a fraction, it is 5 and 8 tenths. It's exactly how you read it, so I read it the appropriate way. And then don't forget to reduce. So this is actually not written yet. This needs to be 58 over 10, then reduce. So that would be your m over n. But we'll have some examples. And then finally, if it was a percent, there's 2 ways you can do it. Option number 1 is to write it, whatever the percent is without the percent symbol, over 100 and reduce. The second way is to change the percent into a decimal, then to a fraction, then reduce. So it'd be easier to just put it over 100 and reduce. Alright, so let's look at this chart and figure out, is it a rational number or not? And then if it is a rational number, write it as m over n in simplest form. So our first one, 3. Is it a rational number? A rational number is any number you can write as a fraction. So yes, it is. It is an integer, so to write it as m over n form, you simply put it over 1. You do not need to reduce, you're done. Square root of 2, that does not simplify. 2 is not a perfect square, so no, it is not. You cannot write a square root of a non-perfect square as a fraction. So no, it's not a rational number. Our next one, square root of 36. Well, that's not in its simplest form. 36 is a perfect square. So the square root of 36 is, what number times itself gives you 36? 6. So now we're looking at 6. Is 6 a rational number? Yes. How do you write it in m over n form? You simply put it over 1. Okay, our next one's a percent. Can a percent be a rational number? Yes, it can. So yes. And how do you write it as a fraction? You simply put the percent over 100 and then you reduce. So I can divide both those by 10, and I could divide both those by 2. So that is my final answer for that one. Okay. Is this a rational number? Yes, it is. Write it as m over n form. Actually, you can't do that. You learn how to do it in 8th grade. So I'm not going to confuse you and show you how to do that now. But it is a rational number because it's a repeating decimal. Our next one, is it a rational number? Well, yes, it's a fraction. So a fraction can be written as a fraction. Yay, good job. Written as m over n form. Remember, m over n, you have improper fractions. You do not have mixed numbers. So you simply have to convert it into a improper fraction. So 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus 4 is 19. Denominator stays the same. It does not reduce. So that is it as a m over n form. All right, express a decimal in m over n form. Okay, you could insert a text box because this one you don't need to do any math for. I just thought insert a picture because it would be easier to write your fraction. But if you want to insert a text box, you can. So this is written, how do you read it? 4/10. So as a decimal or as a fraction, it's 4/10. But then you need to reduce it. So if you wanted to take a picture of it, great. If you didn't, you can just write it as insert your text box 2/5. And 4/10 is one of those that, remember I said earlier, if you memorize them, your life will be a lot easier. So I knew that. All right. I want to see a picture of this one because I want to see how you do it, that you don't just write the answer that I tell you. So I want to see the steps for this one. So yes, insert a picture. All right, so you read this one as 186 thousandths. So that's how you're going to write it as a fraction. 186 thousandths. So shortcut, if you can't remember what it's called, how many digits to the right of the decimal do you have? 3. How many zeros do you have in the denominator? 3. So if you can remember the same number of zeros in the denominator as you have digits to the right of the decimal, it's the same thing. All right, but I'm not done yet because I can simplify this. Those are both even numbers, so I'm going to divide by 2. All right, now I'm going through to see if I can simplify this one. See here, they're not both even numbers, so I can't divide by 2. I cannot divide by 3 because I can't divide 500 by 3. Can't divide by 4. Definitely can't divide by 5. Can't divide by 6. 7, 8. I'm done. I think 93 is a prime number, so that's your final answer. So take a picture. Our next problem, express decimal in m over n form, so as a fraction form. There's 3 ways we can do this. So I'm going to go through all 3 ways. Ooh, those are ugly lines. All right, one way is to put it over 1. The exact same number over 1. All right, but we're obviously not done. You cannot have a decimal in a fraction, so we need to multiply the numerator by a certain number to move the decimal 2 places to the right. Hopefully you said to yourself, I'm going to multiply by 100. Then what you do to the numerator, you have to do to the denominator in order to maintain a equivalent fraction. So my numerator is going to be negative 148. My denominator is going to be 100. But I'm not done yet because I have to simplify that. I know that I can divide them both by 2 because it's an even number. I can divide it by 2 again because they're both even numbers. And let's see here, negative 37 is a prime number, so now I am done. Okay, second way is to write it as fraction. How you read it. How would you read this number? Negative 1 and 48 hundredths. So as a fraction, negative 1 and 48 hundredths. Okay, now I'm going to turn that into an improper fraction because in m over n form, they cannot be mixed numbers. So negative 148 divided by over 100. Now I can simplify that. I'm going to divide them both by 4. 100 divided by 4 is 25. Negative 148 divided by 4 is negative 37, which is the same answer I already got. My third way is very similar to the last way. So negative 148, I'm going to write this number without the decimal over a 1 with the same number of zeros as there are digits to the right of the decimals. There are 2 digits to the right of the decimal, so I'm going to have it over 100. Now I'm going to simplify. Divide them both by 4. I get negative 37 over 25. So you don't have to do your problems 3 separate ways. You need to figure out which one way you're going to always remember and do it that way. Whichever way is easiest for you is the way you need to do it. And put it in your thing. All right, so express it in m over n form, but this is a percent. So to write it as a percent, we put it over 100. Okay, but here's a problem. You cannot have a decimal in a fraction. So what do we have to do to get rid of the decimal? Multiply it by 10, but what you do to the numerator, you have to do to the denominator. So 11.5 times 10 is 115, so that means your denominator is 1,000. Okay, the other way we can do it, turn it to a decimal first, moving it 2 places to the left. Okay, now that went from a percent to a decimal. Now we can make this into a fraction because that is read as 115 thousandths, or there's going to be 1, 2, 3 zeros in my denominator. Okay, so I ended up with the same thing. It's whichever way you can remember it. If you can remember to get rid of move your decimal by multiplying numerator and denominator by 10, do it this way. If you can't remember that, but you can remember how to go from a percent to a decimal, Dr. Pepper, remember you move your decimal 2 places to the left, do it that way. Now, you have to simplify it. I'm only going to simplify one of them. I'm not going to simplify both, so I just got to start it down there. I can divide both of these by 5. I have to do my work over here because I don't know what 115 divided by 5 is in my head. $23 over 200. 23 is a prime number, so I am done. 23 over 200 is the answer. Okay, and that's it for today.